Hello, this is Women Deliver Live, and my name is Femi, and for the next 30 minutes, I have three excellent guests to talk about how has the day been today. Jill Sheffield is a founder of Women Deliver. Natalia Kanem is the executive director of UN Population Fund, and Thembisa Fakude is head of research at Jazeera Center for Studies. You may have seen it on previous Women Deliver Live. And we will talk about that in just a moment. It's great to have you here. Thank you for coming. Highlights for you, Jill, as somebody who was one of the creators, the idea for Women Deliver came out of your head. When you look at what you've seen, not just today, but the last couple of days, what do you think?
I think it's magnificent what's happened to Women Deliver. And you know, the part of it that is so exciting are the number of young people here. Young people with very specific ideas, very specific desire to learn, to exchange, to say, hey, I'm trying this. Have you tried it? And today, two young people, we were talking, and she said, did you actually do that? And it's that spirit of, I can try it, I can do it. And I think that's what this power is about.
There's a definite atmosphere as you walk through. For me, I feel exhilarated and exhausted at the same time. I don't know how is that possible, but it feels like I'm rejuvenated. That my sense of activism, my values, and I'm like with like-minded people, and then people I've never met before who are giving me new ideas. And also, how am I going to get through to Thursday? That's how I feel. Natalia, how do you feel?
I'm excited and I'm re-energized. The theme being power, you know, when you think of a battery giving power, prolonging something, it's really exciting, not just because, for me, having been active in the fight for a long time, there are reunions all over the place, but new ideas, really figuring out and learning new things. It's really been fantastic.
Tell me one new thing that you've learned in the last couple of days.
Today, I sat in an audience and I saw the power and creativity of a makeup artist to portray what life must be like for women who are suffering from gender-based violence. You know, abuse of women is something that we can change. And her imagination, her vividly bringing this to life was amazing.
Thembisa, you are almost like a Women Deliver Live out and about reporter, picking up on the ambience, stirring people up, playing the devil's advocate. I do not think you are playing the devil's advocate. I think you are just putting forward your own views and hiding behind that. But the atmosphere for you as you're enjoying all of this and also making conversations happen, can you describe that?
Oh, it's fascinating. I mean, for me, it's a learning platform, new narratives, and I've decided just to keep quiet, observe, and learn.
Just today, you've decided
Well,
to do
not
that.
today, from the time I came in here, because
I'm not so sure.
the gender vocabulary and lingua is changing all the time.
Okay.
And you don't want to embarrass yourself. In fact, even women, old feminists, are struggling with the
Do you,
new
want to give us,
terms.
do you want to give us an example of new terms that
Well,
that you
today,
use?
this thing used to be called exhibition. When I was growing up, it's an exhibition center. Now it's called foiling center.
But that's,
know.
that's because Women Deliver is always ahead of the curve. Right.
So those kind of things, I mean, it's really fascinating for me. I mean, I've been learning. The narrative is just quite vast.
Jill?
I went to a session today on data, which is one of my least favorite things. But at the opening session, Katya said, go to something new, something you don't know much about, but you depend on. So I went to one on data, and it was totally fascinating because half the time they were speaking in a language I didn't know. But the basic thing we were talking about is why count, why measure, who to count, when to count, what not to count. But basically, it came back to the issues of equality. And they were talking about taking information from patients in clinics, but they knew that people were being left out. And they said, well, of course they're going to be left out because they don't come to clinics. And it was just a fascinating conversation about how you cover that in different ways. So I have a new appreciation for data. I know it's important. It's part of how we can use and wield power. It is in those numbers, and they help us design and implement programs. But hearing specialists talk about it, people who just love it, is a whole different thing. It really is.
Passionate about data, and you can see it shining in their eyes, and you're thinking, okay, maybe there's something to this.
Exactly.
Because they're so excited.
That's right.
One of the challenges of Women Deliver is the program is so vast
Yes.
that how do you pick which event do you go to? There's this FOMO, there's fear of missing out. So I'm going to share one of the clips from today. So there's a plenary session that got a lot of attention, and it was the power of the arts using words and music and design to advance gender equality. And a woman who was on fire, she always kills it every time. She had people laughing, was comedian Mason Zayed. Have a look. Can you hear? Can you hear the audio? All right.
About yourself, you should. And I have come to Women Deliver to give you all some advice you don't want to hear. I'm going to start by giving you 2 questions that you should never ask anyone. Never ask anyone if they have kids. It's your go-to question, and you know it. It's okay to ask people if they're married. You might be interested in doing the horizontal tango, and that is a valid question. Also, by the way, single people, marriage is a racket, and you should avoid it at all costs.
Mason Zayed making us all laugh. That was at one of the earlier plenaries, talking about arts and how the arts can kind of help us advance our causes. I found that there was a level of candor here for many of the discussions. Delegates are sharing painful moments, Me Too moments, times where they had cancer, times when they're really suffering, that there are people crying and emoting and sharing here in a way that I haven't seen in many other places. I know, Natalia, that you were at an event just last night talking about cervical cancer, and just the beginning of that conversation was quite painful.
The fact is, there are too many taboos, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality, that have been used to separate people. And last night was a wonderful moment led by Dr. Nono from WHO, the World Health Organization. She put the facts and figures, but broke it down, and you alluded to earlier, in language that anybody can understand. Part of our issue, which Women Deliver, I think, is succeeding in getting over, is everybody's in their silo, everybody's got their particular jargon, and the mix and the power, the unity, is what's going to get us over the hump. So in that event last night, to hear testimony from women who've survived cervical cancer, where there were attempts to shame people, where cancer can be very stigmatizing, that reminded me of work that we did during the HIV epidemic. Then we also had the ability of thinking of the person holistically. Okay, you've got a condition, you've got an issue, mental health, there's so many other things that affect us, but if we're silenced, it makes it doubly painful. And we need venues like this. This is what we'll be doing in Nairobi as well, reminding people that part of the rights equation is not to stigmatize and stereotype, but to bring to light problems so we all find a solution together.
I like the way you slickly segued into what the UNFPA will be doing in Nairobi.
Yes,
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, you know, we feel a lot of solidarity with what Women Deliver has been tremendous in getting across. Resources. So we've really talked a lot about financing what we have to do. And of course, we had that amazing announcement from Canada, putting big money behind sexual and reproductive health and rights over the course of the next years. Amazing. And what UNFPA wants to make clear is that no one does it alone. And this is a partnership venue. And going into Nairobi, when we celebrate the Cairo conference in 1994, where we said women's rights are important. Women should not die while giving birth. This is going to be another opportunity for us to affirm what we should all know, but I don't take for granted, which is that no woman should die while giving birth, but also young people need information and respect in order to prevent some of that. So,
Yeah. Some of the pre-conferences involved young people, youth, young fellows, and for me, this is where you get the most candor, and people were just very happy to share. There was one moment, the Generation Now pre-conference on Sunday, and one of the young innovators was talking about, well, you need to just have a conversation about sex. And you can be very upfront about it. I was, well, how do you talk about sex? Like you're doing your groceries. That's how you talk about sex. I hate grocery shopping. That's not going to be the most compelling conversation. But I love the energy that is coming from the younger delegates. Jill, you do too.
So do I. And I think it is a safe space to talk about things that are difficult, perhaps outside this building or outside this meeting and this group. But I also think it's a space where you can tell what didn't work or what the mistake was and have an exchange and think about it differently. I think this has grown from, in the beginning, it was the name Women Deliver was so important because one woman was dying every minute. And it's just a crisis, a personal one and a family one and a global one that it shouldn't exist in the 21st century. And we've made real progress on that. So the name has moved from women deliver babies and die too often to women deliver everything. And so we need to take advantage and build from that. And I am particularly pleased at the number of men who are here. There are more, and they're more participatory than ever before. And there have been some really hot arguments on the floor. And that's great. That's what should happen at a Women Deliver.
Thembisa.
No, totally agree. But for me, what's also been important is this articulation or the amplification of the new feminisms. And I was speaking to a lot of young people who've got a different idea of what gender justice is all about.
Correct.
They're outside the stereotypical understanding of what feminism was all about, including discussion on sex. They've got their own terms, which are much more, they get a softer landing when presented to me, the old youth. So they've got a way of saying, certain things. So that's been fascinating, and I agree with Jill totally. What's been going on here, and the graduation of what women deliver is to be. I mean, Kacha always say women deliver more than just babies, which is good. So we've moved on into matters of gender justice, and this is why you find many African youth that are here. This for them is more than just gender justice. It's a socio-political struggle.
Right.
And I was saying yesterday that this might just also trigger some sort of revolution back at home, because gender justice is at the center of political grievance in many African countries.
Right.
So it's going to be an interesting, I think, post-Women Deliver conference in many countries.
I want to just take a pause here because, again, with the takeaway, we're trying to show some highlights, get people in a sense of what's happening here, even if they're watching from afar. So I want to share with you a Sudanese-American slam poet called Emmy Mahmoud. This is what she did earlier today. Have a look.
When I was 7, my mama cradled bullets in the billows of her robes. That same night, she came home and taught me how to get gunpowder out of cotton with a bar of soap. And years later, when the soldiers held her at gunpoint and asked her who she was, she said, "I am a daughter of Adam. I am a woman. Who the hell are you?"
I know you want to watch the rest. I'm hoping that was streamed, and go to Women Deliver Live and see if you can find that, because that was remarkable. I would love to have played the whole of that poem, but you feel the beauty of that poetry.
But this is also the liberalization of gender justice and the struggle of women, told in this form.
that's right.
Much more interesting,
And it hits home, doesn't
It
it?
hits home. You talked about the data earlier on. I mean, how it's presented here is no longer just charts.
Right.
They've got bubbles and
Yeah.
hearts and arrows,
And they move.
and they
Yeah.
move, and so this is really interesting. Yeah.
There is a culture night tonight, and it means that people can get out and about. People in the city of Vancouver can come and enjoy some of the Women Deliver delegates, and vice versa. Jill, how long have the culture nights been going on? Because they're very, very special.
Since the very beginning. It was one of the super things for a very practical reason. We wanted people to stay inside during the day, but not to miss the culture of the location. So we would bring it in. I know one of our greatest trials was in Kuala Lumpur when we were in a very large, beautiful, new, modern glass building like this. And we said, please, could you put a street market inside? And the first answer was, not a chance. And we said, but sure you can, you've got tattoo artists and food and dancers and music and all of that. And they did it, and it was magnificent. And people stayed in the sessions all day because they knew they could buy the baskets to take home
Yeah.
at the culture night.
Yeah.
I'd just like to emphasize that very often we lecture people about tradition and culture and what's wrong with the way of life that they have. And of course, when we're talking about child marriage, for example, or female genital mutilation, that has to change. But the culture night is also a positive affirmation, like we just heard in the clip with Emmy Mahmood. There are great things that affirm the universality of health, the universality of respect for women. And as we reach across the sound barrier for that, really a lot of times the jargon and the words that we use can be a barrier.
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot of the power of breaking down barriers is also looking for new ways of telling a story.
So Thembisa and I work at Al Jazeera together, and there's always a moment when you're hoping that you'll be able to go live to the culture night, but you're not quite sure if people are ready. So we will keep talking, and we will see if that is actually possible. You can trust me to come along to the takeaway for one time and just say, let's have some video, let's go live. So we shall see. We are called Women Deliver Live, so we will see if that is actually possible. So culture night, can we go to culture night?
Is it raining?
All right, so we're going to have a look there, and it's actually a grayer day than it has been. But at Culture Night, it goes on until 9:30, I believe, tonight, which means that people can be up nice and early for the 6:30 breakfast sessions, and they are standing by, and people are sort of wandering around. Also, we have food trucks too.
Yeah,
So
that's been a plus.
It's going to be a really nice time for people to get into Vancouver, get out of this space and into Vancouver. I am thinking about what is your main agenda, Jill, when you're here. What are you trying to do this week?
Oh, it's clearly still contraception, family planning, maternal mortality, abortion, safe abortion, because abortion rates have come, I'm sorry, that's not right. Maternal mortality rates have come down. Really quite 47%, which is dramatic.
Significant.
Some places it started to creep up. The United States, the maternal mortality rate is going up. And it's almost all women of color and vulnerable women. And this is just simply unacceptable. And there are attendant pieces to that we still have to pay attention to. Young people don't get sex education in schools or at home, and that's a problem. And 214 million girls and women still don't have access to services or supplies. Now, really, we need to manage all of these issues better, and they're related, and they have bad outcomes when we don't deal with them.
Natalia, for you.
From my perspective, absolutely, Jill, we are sitting here 25 years after you and I were both in Cairo for that landmark conference. And we've made a difference, and I think we claim that, and it's exciting to see young people taking that torch and going into the future direction.
Right.
But my aim in being here is to assert over and over that the universal health coverage has to have women at its heart. Sexual and reproductive health is part of that, and to break open those taboos and those silos. Furthermore, I think my goal is to assure that there is absolutely no thought in anyone's mind anywhere that women and girls are going to go backwards. We're moving forward, and there may be disagreement. Not everybody in the world agrees on some of these very sensitive issues of a life cycle, of how we bring up young people and how young people lead. However, it's clear that women are dying because of inaction.
Yeah.
And we have a sense of urgency here. I mean, we're not sitting around talking, we're planning. And planning towards commitments for Nairobi and into the future has been an excellent, excellent part of the discussions here in Vancouver.
Natalia,
Sorry, but a lot of
go ahead,
it's
go.
together.
Together.
That's a new
That's it. Yeah.
piece of the Women Deliver gift to all of us. It's across issues, across age groups, across continents.
Very
and
important.
it's very powerful.
Very important.
There are things that are going on beyond this convention center, that there are bilateral meetings, and this is where the secret work is done. The moving the needle is done. Natalia, can you give us some insight into that?
Well, you know what? We are working very, very closely and carefully with allies who want to make sure that the resources are on the table to make this work happen. And resources, of course, have to be financial and monetary, but resources are also the wonderful intelligence and creative ideas that spark and the together moments. Powerful partnerships are being built. I would say that these bilateral meetings are off-site just because of space issues. There really is not an atmosphere of secrecy. I think the atmosphere is actually one of openness. And we saw that very symbolically represented when the Prime Minister of Canada, the President of Kenya, the female President of Ethiopia spoke to these issues with a young person who ignited a different type of conversation on the opening night. That's continued in so many ways. I have been really, really happy to see that Indigenous women, my African sisters, are here in numbers, and a lot of the young men who are here that UNFPA has sponsored are more than up to the task
They're
when it comes
bigger
to
feminists
advocacy.
than I am, and I've got feminist in my name, and these young
It's
men
amazing.
are out feminizing me. I was just like, my name is feminist, and these youngsters are fantastic. I'm
Yes.
just thinking, I need
Thank
to just
you.
review my values and activism, because they are going way beyond I could possibly think
That's
of.
the excitement. Yeah.
Thembisa, are you a feminist?
Yeah, I'm probably the only Zulu feminist.
Is that an
We
oxymoron?
applaud you.
A Zulu feminist.
I'm a Zulu Muslim feminist. I think it's a serious combination.
Happy Eid, by the way.
Thank you
Eid
very
Mubarak.
Yes,
Eid
Eid
Mubarak
Mubarak
to
to us all.
everybody who is actually celebrating. Your agenda when you came here was what?
Well, my agenda was to learn as much as I could and try and amplify the voices of the gender justice movement because of where we sit, both you and I. But I think mainly for me was to continue learning. I studied gender justice, by the way, at university. And it's...
So back in the 1950s.
yeah,
Femi.
Did they have universities then?
they did. You'd be surprised. In
Thank you for
Timbuktu.
sharing, Grandpa.
The
So I
great
came in
seed of
here
learning.
totally different. Everything has changed. What I learned in the 50s, no longer relevant. And I called my professor, Sheila Menkes, good woman.
Yeah.
And I was telling her about what's going on here. And I said to her, you need to come here. You need to rewrite the books. Things have changed. You've got stronger young men, feminists, who are articulating a totally different position. Radical. You know, so yeah, that's been my my purpose and aim of being here. Yeah.
What shocked you? Conversation that you had that really just made you think,
Well, what shocked me was having the discussion with what's her name? Natasha.
Natasha,
Yeah,
yes.
she's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
She's
absolutely.
brave, speaking truth to power,
Yes.
unafraid of what would happen to her
She
post.
held you, and you were sitting side by side on Women Deliver Live yesterday, and she more than held her own, and probably beat you as far as a debate was concerned.
Sure.
And that was really interesting to watch.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my views, but I don't want to discourage you at the same time because I appreciate the enthusiasm of youth.
Right.
I
And the
was.
power of
Yeah.
youth. The power of youth is actually
Sure.
that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a young person. I was a young youth before. Now I'm an old
In
youth.
the 1900s.
So we had a lovely discussion,
I am
and she
actually,
educated
I'm actually
me.
being
by the way.
ageist and I take it all back, but in fun because we're good friends. Best conversation you've had so far, Natalia?
Wow, there have been so many. I really appreciated the strategic conversations that we've had about how to amplify voices across sectors. So for us, the conversations that I've been holding about how do we bring communities directly into the conversation. How do we assure, in our lingo, accountability means someone should ask you, were you satisfied with this service? Was it done properly? And what can improve? Because, no, nothing's perfect, so we always have to keep reaching for better. So I really found that hearing the type of testimony that we've had here directly from the person who's experiencing the issue, who's finding the solution for the issue, has been really important for me. I've had text messages since I've been here from women with disabilities who are here as very powerful advocates saying, what will UNFPA do next and how can we plan together? Because we want to lead this. And it's been really a pleasure to have that kind of, I would say, mutual understanding that they're not a passive victim. Here you have people, and I'm using disability as one example, but I've also had conversations with, for example, now gender diversity, and for people who are queer, who are not invisible, how do you bring this into a discussion when the law might be against you? So it's been very important for me to hear all these different perspectives and to think about how we can work on dialogue
Right.
in the coming time.
Jill, I know you have multiple conversations and always talking to people, but the one that stands out so far from this week?
I had breakfast with 5 young leaders 2 mornings ago that made such a difference. They were curious about the history of Women Deliver, and I said, well, in a word, we wanted to find a place that was very visible, that had good lights and no dust bunnies on the floor, which is what women's meetings had had in the past. And so we went to that shiny, bright place in London for our first meeting, and we were very exposed. And we said, here we are, and we're not going back. And they each told stories about coming out as feminists in communities that weren't very friendly to them. Almost every one of that 5 has worked at a family planning clinic as a volunteer, Planned Parenthood in the United States. And to hear what they see as the barriers to their moving forward. The other thing that was very funny was that one of them said to the 2 former youth that were there, they said, so your careers look so tidy. And I said, well, that is a total illusion because your career, my career, your career, probably yours, is a series of zigs and zags. And
That's so
sometimes you
true.
make real mistakes. You pick your socks up and you keep going. And they were fascinated by that because they thought everything looked so logical and progressive. And I thought, well, that's an illusion for sure. But it was wonderful because they think differently than we think. And that's the freshness that's here that they have brought to these conversations here in the exhibition hall, but upstairs in the conversation rooms.
And one of the things that I'm doing so that I can just keep in touch with everything, it's difficult to have the whole schedule in your head and
Yeah.
be able to pick and choose. But the hashtag WD 2019 and hashtag the power of, you will find the great conversations. You will find people tweeting and
And
sharing
trending.
and trending.
Yeah.
And that is a great way to just tap into what is actually happening, even if you're not physically here in Vancouver.
But it's also just walking through the hall, searching for water or please coffee. And the number of people you see that have changed jobs, are no longer here, but are continuing to do important, good, controversial things. I'm for disruptive things. So it's just wonderful to
I-
see so many friends.
I also think, you know, the conference has been honest in saying, look, you know, I think we surpassed expectations, over 8,000 people. It's really wonderful. But there are hundreds of millions of people who are not here.
Right.
And that's who we need to speak for. And we also need to have them speak for themselves. Part of our dilemma in a time and place where inequality is hidden, and this is part of the power of data, is to say that someone's missing or the average looks good, but it's because something is very high
Yep.
while others are very low.
Yeah.
So Women Deliver, I think, has given us a platform to be very honest about the fact that there are a lot of people that are being left behind.
Okay.
When we think about the Sustainable Development Agenda, all those 17 goals have to connect the one to the other.
You know what we have just demonstrated? We've demonstrated the power of three fabulous guests. Jill,
Well,
Natalia, Thembisa, thank you for being on the takeaway today.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Been
you
a
for watching.
pleasure.
It was
Thank
fun.
you.
WD Live with Femi OK and three fabulous guests. Hashtag WD 2019. Keep watching us virtually and online. See you soon. Thanks for watching.